Well, hello, hello, y'all. It's your girl, Shauna Ray, and you know what time it is. It's so tonight is Wednesday, y'all, and it's Boss Talk time, and we are here. It is Wednesday, it's 6 o'clock, and we are live. Boss Talk with yours truly, Shauna Ray. So excited to have you all back. We're going to have a bit of a different show tonight because my guest is unable to make it. Technology and all those things. But we will have another time. So jam out my song, and then we'll talk a little bit. Well, hello, hello, hello. It's your girl, Shauna Ray. And it's time for Boss Talk. It is Wednesday at 6 o'clock, and we are here every Wednesday at 6 o'clock. And so let's get started. So first of all, I always like to know what you guys are doing, to get you through to the next weekend that we're looking forward to. And today is hump day. So I want to say hey to those of you that are in the audience. Hello, Mr. Seals. You were early tonight. Well, thank you. Thank you. And hey, Connie Leathers, it's nice to see you. Thank you for tuning in. So I don't know if you read the show notes or not, but we had a plan. And that plan was we were going to talk about Black wealth, the truth about Black wealth. Is it a dream or is it a nightmare? However, make plans and just watch them change. So we made plans to have Dr. Lance McCarthy on tonight, but we had a lot of technical difficulty. And so we're going to have to reschedule him to September 13th. So for that conversation, please do come back. But tonight, I want to get a little audience participation. So I'm not sure if you are aware, but today is National Grief Awareness Day. So I want to talk to you a little bit about that day. So August 30th is National Grief Awareness Day. And I think that I'm not sure how it was founded or how it got started. But when you think about grief, the Grief Recovery Institute often states that stress is another word for grief. And so the Grief Recovery Institute defines grief as the conflicting feelings caused by the end of or change in a familiar pattern of behavior, the normal and natural reaction to any change that occurs in life. Now, we might look at that and kind of go, because most of the time when we think about grief, we're thinking about the loss of a person, of an individual that we loved, someone that we knew, and even pets. We grieve the loss of pets. And so to see that the definition, according to the Grief Recovery Institute, is not talking about the loss of a loved one or a person, but of a change in behavior. And so tell me what you think about that, Connie and William out there in the audience, and whoever else is out there with us tonight. Let me know what you think about that, because most of the time when we think about grief, like I said, we're talking about losing a loved one or, that kind of thing. So what are your thoughts on that definition? And I'll repeat it. Says that grief is the conflicting feelings caused by the end of or change in a familiar pattern of behavior, the normal and natural reaction to any change that occurs in life. So tell me what you think about it, because when I look at that definition, I think two things. I think it's interesting because I definitely believe that we definitely can grieve things other than the loss of a loved one. Um, some of the other, you know, ways that or things that we grieve are the loss of a job, the loss of financial stuff, the way that we were, the way that we were living, the way that um, we had come accustomed to something, and then there's a change or a shift. A lot of times the grief part comes from there being a downshift in, say, our financial situation or state of being, the loss of a job, the loss of a relationship. Those are all means and reasons that people grieve. So tell me what you think. Y'all type it in, put it in the chat. Let me hear from you. I think that when as you all know, I experienced a great loss during COVID, and many of us did. COVID was a time of great loss for the nation, for the world, actually, because not only were people losing loved ones, friends, co-workers, those kinds of things, but we also lost life as we knew it. We lost the ability to move about the world freely. And I wonder if any of you consider that as a loss. When we were on lockdown, the way that we participated in our lives changed quite a bit, and so we were experiencing something entirely different, something that no one had experienced in over 100 years. And so being able to move about freely, to be able to go to restaurants, to shop freely, all of those things were kind of taken away from us, and it's a form of grief. So let's see. William Seals says, I would have to agree. You could grieve over not completing a lifelong dream as a baseball player, firefighter, doctor, lawyer, etc. Absolutely. Yes. And I think it's really, important when you think about a lifelong dream, because imagine how many people have set out to do something and then something got in the way, like an illness, an injury, or some life circumstance took you away from the thing that you wanted, that lifelong dream, that desire, that hope, and that expectation. And so I think that we often don't think of that when we think of grieving, but some of the feelings are the same. And so it's an interesting concept to consider. Um, I know that there have been times in my life that I have grieved other than a human being, and in some cases, grieving the loss of a friendship. So though that involves a human being, that human being is still living on the planet. But if something comes between a friendship, a relationship, then we find ourselves in a space of grieving. And grieving it can be painful. It can be so painful that it can look like physical pain. It can feel like physical pain. And so I think that we have to consider that that we have to give space for those kinds of grieving incidents or activities. So can someone else share about a period of grief that you suffered from that maybe was not the loss of a loved one? A disappointment that can cause us to grieve. As you all know, I was made a COVID widow because I lost my husband, my late husband, William Joseph Brinkley, to COVID. And I think in those circumstances, with COVID being the culprit, if you will, I recognized that I actually had several levels to the grief. There were there was the loss itself, the loss of someone that I loved and cherished dearly, the loss of companionship, and then also still being in COVID, the camaraderie and the closeness and connection that we had in the midst of having to be isolated from everyone. I think many people grieved just that isolation, that you could not go and freely see your friends. You couldn't freely go about the globe, like I said before. And that was devastating to many of us. And then with the loss of my husband, there was also, I had to grieve the fact that I could not have a service for him the way that I intended, the way that most of us expected. Um, because of COVID, um, there were so many people that had passed away that the funeral homes were inundated and backed up, and so it was a little bit more than 3 months before I could actually have a service for William Joseph. And whereas on the one hand, I think that was kind of it was a blessing in that I feel like if I had had to do that service immediately after his death, a week or 2 weeks after his death, like we normally do, that I would not have been able to be present. I would have been in the midst of the grips of the grief. And in that space, in a lot of pain, that I would not have been present. I would not have had presence of mind in attending his celebration of life. And in the fact that I was able to do that, I was able to hear some of the stories that people had to tell about him, and some things I didn't know, and just being able to really experience the love of my friends and family at that time. So whereas it was really not a great, well, that's like a that's really an understatement. It was a devastating event and a devastating day to have to say goodbye to him in that way, but to be able to be surrounded by friends and family and to be able to feel their presence and be really aware, because I had had time to do the wailing and the kicking and the screaming and the yelling. Not that I didn't do that again later, but it just made a difference in that for me. Let's see, Mr. Seals saying, I also believe there are different degrees when it comes to grieving sometimes. The grieving can be intensely painful and other times moderate, like a slow, mild burn. Ooh, yes, yes, indeed. I love that analogy, like a slow, mild burn. I absolutely believe that, because I think that when you lose someone there, and I know from our conversations, Mr. Seals, that you lost someone dear to you as well. Um, the feeling, sometimes you're numb to a degree, but even in those moments when a person is numb during the grieving process, there's an awareness that I can relate to. That's like that moderate, that slow, mild burn. That it's an awareness, and it's also a helplessness, because there's nothing you can do about it except go through it and deal with it. So thank you for sharing that. I like that analogy. Hey, Kay, welcome back. Nice to see you. Thank you for tuning in. So, Kay, our original guest, which was economist and investment advisor Elance McCarthy, was not able to get connected properly and all of that. We had a lot of technical difficulty. So we're going to reschedule him to September 13th. But today is National Grief Awareness Day. So we're talking about experiences of grief and talking about how there can be different kinds of grief, that grief is more than just the loss of a loved one or a friend or a relative or an acquaintance, more than the loss of a human or an animal, but it can be situations, it can be hopes and dreams and those kinds of things. So is there anything that you care to share about grief that strikes you here? We love to hear from you. We're just going to chat for a while here tonight. And so I thank you all for hanging with a girl tonight. Thank you. so I want to share. So I am oddly enough, after having gone through the grieving process in the way that I did, I'm also a grief recovery specialist, and so in that I worked with victims of violent crime and homicide as my first group of clients that I saw as a therapist, and that was in, good Lord, that was in 2011, I think, when I started working with them, and continued to work with them a while. And I was introduced at Loved Ones Victim Services. Shout out to Dr. Raymond Mars, who was my clinical supervisor and who was a psychologist for LAPD. And shout out to Farrell Robbins, who was the executive director and my mentor at the time, and even still, and also was a guest on Bus Talk. Well, she and they introduced me to the 4 tasks of mourning. And so I want to talk a little bit about what the 4 tasks of mourning are. If you have seen my TEDx talk, I share about the 4 tasks of mourning in that talk. And maybe we can get the link for my TEDx up too. But I want to see what Connie is saying. Connie. She says, my deepest grief was the loss of my son in a car accident at 6 years old. It's been 40 years, but I'm still grieving. I will never know what it was like for him to go to prom, graduate, etc. Connie, yes. Thank you so much for sharing that. I appreciate your sharing that. And my heart goes out to you because I know that it still hurts after 40 years. And that's the thing. Grief, like William said, there are different degrees. There are different, I don't want to say stages. I don't like to say stages, and here's why. I know there are the five stages of grief, but I think for me, stages indicate that something goes like 1, 2, 3, 4. And though the 4 tasks of mourning are obviously, they come in an order when you read them or when you learn them. However, there's a task that's involved rather than a stage, and a task is something that you must do. And so it doesn't indicate that you do this, then you do that, then you do this, then you do that. But these are the 4 things that you will go through. And sometimes you will repeat and go back to something. And you may get to the very last task, but find yourself wafting back into one of the other areas because it's unpredictable and emotions are unpredictable. And so there's less expectation, I think, with the idea of the 4 tasks of mourning. So I want to share what they are. We found an acronym for it, which I will give to you later. But there's a psychologist by the name of J. William Worden, and he provides a framework for these 4 tasks that help us to understand how people journey through the grieving process. So healing happens gradually as the grievers address these tasks in no specific order, going back and forth from one to another over time. So task 1 is to accept the reality of the loss. So you intellectually know that someone has died, but you might experience a sense of disbelief. And integrating the reality of their death means taking it in with your entire being. So taking it in holistically with your whole self. So an example of this is the reality may begin to set in immediately after the death, when you have to take care of the arrangements, calling the mortuary, going to the memorial, or, picking up the ashes, whatever it is. But weeks and months or even years later, like Connie said, 40 years ago, she lost her dear 6-year-old son. But many years later, when an occasion arises that maybe the person would have been a part of, the reality hits you again as you realize that this loved one has died and that they aren't here with you to share in some of the beautiful moments that you continue to experience as you continue among the living in these cases. So then the task number 2 is to process the pain of the grief. So grief is experienced emotionally, cognitive, physically, and spiritually. So it's, like I said a moment ago, it's holistic. It's throughout the entire body. So people may be telling you to get over it, to move on, to be strong, and all those things. But in contrast, one of the aims of grief support groups is to encourage and facilitate that you have a safe expression of all the natural grief reactions. So there's no timeline, there's no particular way that it's supposed to look, none of those things. And so it's giving yourself full permission to be who you are in the grieving process. And so let's see, Kay says, the loss of my younger brother by 3 years with unspoken forgiveness and closure by us of disagreements. Yes, yes, Kay, thank you for sharing that. I know that must be hard. And that's you're not alone in having a circumstance like that where we never know the timeline of when we may lose someone. And if we haven't said those things, we haven't had closure, we haven't cleared up disagreements and hurts and pain, then the pain can linger on, as well as it can sting in a situation like that. So thank you for your vulnerability and transparency and sharing that. How long ago was that you lost your brother, your younger brother? So now then, task number 3, to adjust to a world without the deceased. External adjustments include taking on responsibilities and learning new skills. So for me, that was a big thing when I had to take on the responsibilities of my house, of the household, of the chores, the tasks around the house, the financial things. We went from a two income household to a one income household. So that's an example of external responsibilities. Internal adjustments are made as you adapt to the new identity that you take on in the midst of a loss, right? And so those are things that you have to work on inside yourself, that sort of as you shift who you are-ness, as you all know, that's my word. As you shift that during times of grief and loss, you do become sort of a new somebody, because your definition changes. And spiritual adjustments occur as you kind of grapple with the questions about your belief system and the purpose and meaning of life. And so often, I've heard many people say that they are angry with God, and that that's not a disrespectful thing. That's not that's not when someone shows a lack of faith or any of that. Sometimes you can experience a lack of faith. It doesn't have to be a long-term thing, but in that moment, the pain causes you to wonder, because of course, many times we pray that loved one, get better, or we pray for our children every day when they leave the house, family members and all of that, but they still leave us and die. And so that can be very conflicting in terms of the way we feel about things, and about our faith, and about our belief systems and those kinds of things. And so that's part of the adjustment that we have to go through when we're living in a world where someone that we loved and cherished and is no longer with us. And I know that all too well. I know it all too well. Thank you, Connie. Connie says 2009. Now, Connie, was that when you lost your son? Or no, that's not 40 years ago, is it? No, that's for Kay, then I guess you're talking about. Thank you. So the fourth and last task of the 4 tasks of mourning is to find an enduring connection with the deceased in the midst of embarking on a new life. Wow. I remember this one from my TEDx talk. And for each one of these, I said I wasn't ready yet, and I could not quite wrap my head around them at the time, and still sometimes. Gradually, you create balance between remembering the person who died and then going on to live a full and meaningful life yourself. And sometimes that's quite a dance, to have to do that. It is quite a dance, because sometimes I'm sure that you all might. Oh, Connie, he's your brother too. I got it. Okay. Thank you for sharing that. See. Kay says 2009, rushing to Milwaukee to see him before his last breath and didn't make it. But the sweet relief was seeing him without tubes and struggling to breathe. Yes, yes. Absolutely. I understand that. That must have been really hard. And, I hope that, my prayers go out to you and just your journey of having lost him without being able to see him, without being able to resolve some of those issues. But I do believe that we can still communicate with those we have lost, and it can be a beautiful thing. So I'm hoping that you have found some peace in that. Yes, thank you. Thank you. So you two are sister-in-laws. Okay. Oh, wait, sisters. Your brother too. Yeah, you're sisters. Duh. Okay. I want to put my TEDx talk. This is the link to it in case you haven't seen it. It's called When the Fairy Tale Fades, and you can find it on YouTube using that link right there. So I'll leave that up for a moment in case y'all want to get it. And yes, sisters. I got it. So there again is that link to my TEDx talk if you all want to grab it. So there is a what do you call it? There is a oh gosh, what am I trying to say? There's an acronym for the tasks of grief, and I'm going to share that with you all. For tasks of mourning, rather. And so I want to share that with you all. Here, let's see. So I'm going to see if I can put it up on the screen for y'all. Let me grab it for you all. Let's see. I'm going to take that off. So that way you can actually look into this 4 tasks of mourning. Uh-oh. Let me see. Nope. Yep. All right, here we go. No, I don't want that one. I want that one. Okay. So can you all see this? It's the tasks of grief, and the acronym is TEAR. So to accept the reality of the loss, to experience the pain of the loss, adjust to the new environment without your loved one, and reinvest in the new reality. So maybe you can take a picture of that, because I think it's a really good way to kind of navigate, if you will, the grieving process. Because it can be a lot. It can be quite a lot. So I just really think that it's important that we kind of consider ways to manage it, to get through it, because we're all going to be faced with it. So Mr. Seal says, I'm just curious, do women grieve harder than men when it comes to physical relationships and breakups? I don't know how to answer that. I think that in some cases, maybe. I don't think there's any I don't think there's any one answer to that. I think it is a very individual thing. I think that I think that most people would think so because, um, people say that women are much more emotional than men. And I would agree that women have a different connection to their emotions than men do. So I don't know if I would say that it's harder. I would say that it's different because I think that a man may grieve over the loss of a relationship um, really hard, but he may not show it in the same way that a woman might show it. And so therefore people might um, indicate or think that it is, it means that she is grieving harder. I think that you can't say. I think different is the word that I would use. Uh, let's see. Thanks for that question, Mr. Seals. Gwendolyn, hey sis. She says, God bless you, Ms. Boss Talk Brinkley, for being willing to take this still tender for you topic on. Yeah. Connie, I feel you, my sister. Firstborn left the earth, shockingly, also to undetected heart disease. Yes, indeed. And Gwendolyn, my heart still breaks for you, but I love the way that you have adjusted to the loss. We're just talking about the 4 tasks of mourning, and I think that if I may share, Gwendolyn and her family have created a way to celebrate the loss of Jason, their son, son and brother for your daughter, who left the world at 26 years old. Uh, and they have a inspirational walk. It's called Jason's Walk, and inspirational it absolutely is. They have an inspiration garden where they put inspirational words on little flowers and plant them around or put them around the space. It's a wellness, self-care kind of a day. It's a day dedicated to discussions and practices around heart disease. And so I think that's a beautiful way to honor Jason's life. And so, yeah, sis, thank you for that. Thank you for what you do and your courage. And thank you for recognizing that this is a tender topic for me. And I guess because I was watching our dear sister, Dr. Tama, today. So, hey, Soror, Terry says, it depends on how deeply you loved that person. I think so. I think she's talking about in response to Mr. Seal's question about women grieving harder than men. And I think that is true. I think depending on the depth of love and, sometimes just we show up differently in how we grieve. There are different times that it may hit us harder at one time than at another. And some people can't even connect with their grief. And that's when it can be unhealthy, though, or when it can hit you like a ton of bricks. I remember when I lost my mom, I was there with her, and that was a beautiful gift that I had. And then I had to go immediately into planning mode, planning the funeral, planning, taking care of her businesses. She had 2 businesses and houses and all that stuff, and had to deal with all of that. And I returned home here to California, dropped my suitcases, and went to work. And in about 2 or 3 months, I had to stop. I had to just take pause and really allow myself to have the time to grieve and to honor that space for myself. So absolutely. Thank you for tuning in, Soror. And Terry was recently a guest on Boss Talk, so thank you for that too. Connie says, love that, Gwendolyn. Absolutely. And Terry, actually, I want to share about your book. If you could put the title in climbing the corporate ladder, I believe, but it has more to it. So put that in. And for those of you who were here that night, we want to thank you because Terry did make it to on Amazon's #1 bestseller list. Yes. Shout out to that. That was awesome. That was really awesome. And so, so I want to know about some of the other losses that we may have had, like, you know, or if you're just tuning in and you want to share about the loss of a loved one, and how you kind of navigated it and managed it. I think that it's important that we acknowledge that everyone grieves differently, and I think it's important to respect that. I think sometimes people may mean well. Some of them do, some of them don't. But some people may mean well, but they may not honor your journey as you grieve. They may have expectations for you that are unrealistic. They may have expectations for you that actually are none of their business, because how you grieve is how you grieve. And there should be no expectations from other people. You should be allowed to be open and grieve in the way that God allows you to, in the way that your heart allows you to, or dictates, is what I really want to say. Hey, Miss Chantel Denise, all the way from Austin, Texas. She says, I think that grief has no measure. It's a life process that we all experience. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I love that you said it's a life process, because just as a moment ago, Connie spoke about losing her 6-year-old son 40 years ago, and she says she's still grieving. And Gwendolyn, who lost her young man at 26 years ago, about 17 or 18 years ago. And it's a process, it's a journey. And we all go through it for different things and over different causes, different experiences. So thank you for that. Let's see. Terry says, thank you, all the boss talkers. It's an Amazon bestseller. Yes, climbing the corporate ladder, 10 mistakes to avoid before reaching the top. Absolutely. And I'd like to think that some of you boss talkers were helpful in helping Miss Terry reach that coveted goal, because I'm sure you all went on after the show and copied that link and bought that book on Thursday like you were supposed to. So we thank you, we thank you, we thank you. And again, congratulations, Terry. So again, when we think about, I love that this day is dedicated to discussing grief and to making people more aware of all the different kinds of grief that we can experience, of all the different ways that we can grieve. And it's kind of like, giving ourselves a permission slip to do you, boo, right? And to grieve the way that your heart feels it, and allows and opens up for you to do it. There are several things. I just found something here that I'm going to see if I can put up regarding the pandemic and grief. Let's see. I'm going to grab it in just a moment. And something else here talking about the different, many types of loss that can cause us grief. But in the meanwhile, would somebody care to share what your thoughts are about some of the different causes of grief? I've talked about some, but let me hear from you all. Gwendolyn says, thank you for sharing our family's tribute to our son, Jason, forever 26. Indeed, it is called the Inspiration Walk, done annually in August. Absolutely. What was the date this year? I think it was the week that I was away, and I hate that I missed it. Terry Sora says, my grief began with the death of my father. Then my job forced me into retirement. And then 23 days later, my mother made her transition. Talk about rough. Indeed. And yes, Terry shared about that when she was on the show. And gosh, what can we say? Sometimes grief will hit you with a 1-2 punch and then a 1-2-3 punch in this case. And that is hard because where do you start, right? Do you're just getting started, wrapping your head around the death of your father, and then you get hit with this news at your job, and then your support, your last support wheel is rolled away. My heart goes out to you still for that. I know that was really, really difficult. What year was that, Terry? And if you want to share some of your journey, like how you managed your way through that. Johnny D of Texas, of Austin, Texas, says, how we grieve, in my view, is influenced not only by our gender, but also by our individual psychological makeup, as well as the way our environment has shaped what is culturally acceptable grief. Oh, yes, absolutely. That is so good. That is so true. When you think about it, I know as an African-American woman, sometimes the expectation is that you don't have time to grieve. You got to, have that service, cry those tears, and get back at the grind, get back to it, get back to moving, and, having to move through it quickly has been a norm. I think with more and more people seeking therapy services and spiritual counsel and all of that, I hope that some of that is changing and that people are actually taking the time to grieve and to go through some of the process, because it is a process. And I know that many of us know that there's the Grief Recovery Institute has a particular way of helping people go through the grieving process. I forget what it's called, grief recovery. And I am a certified grief recovery specialist, not through the Grief Recovery Institute, but through some other clinical areas. And so thank you for sharing that, John. I appreciate that viewpoint. And Terry said that was in 2018 that she lost her father, her job, and her mother all in the same month, it sounds like. Yeah. Wow. Connie says, I wrote my first book during COVID lockdown called Lockdown in Love. Ooh, I think I really grieved the loss of my first love after all these years. I dealt with my grief by writing. Ooh, thank you for sharing that. I love that. And thank you for that idea of that is one way to get it out. I always say that grief, trauma, depression, anger, all those things are like gas. They are better out than in. And so however you get things out there is a beautiful thing. And, writing a book is a way of journaling. And so definitely putting it down there and letting it leave your body as a release. So thank you for sharing that. And where do we get this book? Is this book published yet? Do tell. Kay says, Sean, thank you for bringing this meaningful conversation to us and understanding that we handle grief and loss in different ways. I'm signing out for now, but we'll join you next month. Thank you. I look forward. So just so you know, Kay, next Wednesday, Boss Talk will be doing an encore show because your girl will be in Paris on that day. So tune back in on the 13th of September. Thank you. And thank you for sharing. Appreciate it. Bye-bye. Terry says, it took me a year to go back to Cleveland and stay in their house. Then I had to clean out their house and move some of their belongings back to Michigan. But doing all that served as therapy for me. Oh, I'll bet. Yeah, I'm sure it was difficult, but I bet it was like a walk down memory lane, kind of looking back and reminiscing over some of the good times and crying a lot too, I am sure. And that is indeed therapy. So thank you for sharing that. So Connie, how you just gonna have a book and we just now knowing about it? Gwendolyn, did you know about this? Published in 2021 on Amazon. Lockdown. Is it Lockdown for Love? Let me see. Lockdown in Love. Lockdown in Love. Please, y'all, go find that book by Constance. Is it under Connie or Constance Leathers? Let us know. Yes, the 13th, Kay. We'll see you then. Thank you. So I really believe that, writing and publishing is a gift. It's also, one way of healing is by sharing your story. And so I think that it is commendable to be able to write and share your story, because somebody else can benefit from the things that you have gone through. Like as Terry talked about her corporate climb, and she talks about the 10 mistakes to avoid on that journey. So using some of the mistakes that she may have experienced or has seen other people go through can help others to not have to fall into those same holes. So I love that. Terry says, I did get a journal, and whenever I was sad or missed them, I would write my feelings of how I was feeling. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. It is truly a gift to do that. For me, sometimes those writings and those thoughts and those feelings show up as poems and poetry. So Gwendolyn says, this year it was Friday, August 18th, and we got to partner with Heart Health Edutain, with another local nonprofit and our city councilwoman. Writing through the many kinds of losses has been my tool. Absolutely. I love it. I love it. I'm so glad that, and I love that you were, partnering with these other entities, because we often talk about collaboration and how the value of things kind of goes up when you collaborate, because you have different perspectives, tools, resources, and your audience gets to know their audience, and more people can be involved. And so I love that you do that. That's beautiful. Thank you. Hey, Brother Allen says, enjoy your trip. Can't wait to hear about your trip. Ooh, you will. I wish I could take you along to document it. But I'll do my best to document it myself. Thank you, my brother. Good to see you. And tune in next week, because we were supposed to have your man, Mr. Lance, Dr. Lance, on, but we had some technical difficulties. So he will be returning on September 13th to have the conversation about the truth about Black wealth. Is it a dream or is it a nightmare? And you know that he is an economist and an investment advisor. So this should be a great conversation next week. So tune in, or no, I'm sorry, in 2 weeks. So yes. So y'all, we are getting close to the 7 o'clock hour. And so I want to know, excuse me, that was yummy coffee. I want to thank you all for hanging with a sister here tonight in this non-traditional boss talk. I think this has been a great conversation. And I want to, I just want to acknowledge you for tuning in and for participating in the conversation. Let me see. Mr. Seals says, when I was approximately 30 years old, I am 64 today. One of the hardest decisions to make was to move on from a marriage. I agonized over the thought of separating from my children. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Absolutely. In fact, in my TEDx talk, I do mention that maybe the loss is a divorce, because that is a union that was made. And of course, when you make that union and you stand before God and make those vows, it hurts to have to dissipate from that. And there are a lot of people that hurt when a divorce takes place, particularly other than the two individuals who are separating the union, but the children and other family members as well. So thank you for your transparency and sharing that, Mr. Seals. Hey, Linda Kirk, how are you? She says, take me with you on your trip, sister. I wish I could. I wish I could. Let's see. Thank you for tuning in, Linda. It's good to see you. Gwendolyn said, actually, Connie just reminded me to buy. She mentioned it during our board retreat, and she needs me marketing for her since she never mentioned it again. Absolutely. Now, let me think. Now, I think I do remember that in the board retreat. Now that you said that, Gwendolyn, but thank you. Yeah, Miss Connie, girl, we need to talk. We need to get you on the show to talk about Lockdown in Love. Oh, I'm excited. That sounds really good. Sounds like a movie, actually. Linda, I'm great. Love you. Love you too. Good to see you. Thank you. So I think I want to just really I want to ask a question. Since I got y'all here, I want to know, what are some shows that you might like to see? What are some topics you might like to see us cover on Boss Talk this fall? So if you have something on your mind, write it in the chat and we will consider it. My producer is here, and we will take it under advisement, as they say. But I think I want to just share one more little thing. But let me see what you got. What are your thoughts? So we talked about how there were losses during the pandemic, and my producer found something. Here's let's see. Gwen says Connie's book is a show for sure. Absolutely. So my producer found something that I want to share with you guys. So hold on a second. Where did it go? Oh, there it is. Okay, now I know. All right, get rid of that. Okay, here we go. Here we go. I'm going to share this with you because it talks about loss during the pandemic. So I just want to give it a quick show here. That's not it. That's not it. Well, I'll do it this way. There we go. And there we go. Okay, so let me see. So pandemic in the middle. So a loss of routine and predictability. I mentioned that. Loss of employment and income. Loss of independence and freedom. Loss of future. Loss of endings. Ooh. Loss of physical activity. Loss of entertainment and social life. Loss of events and celebrations, graduations, prom, wedding, funeral. Loss of relationships and friends, illness, loss of health, death, loss of life, loss of control. Wow. Yeah. Those are definitely some pretty poignant loss ideas that we suffered during the pandemic. And I think that when we really look back and think about that was quite a thing. And so I invite you all to really kind of think back on, some of those losses from the pandemic, and just make sure that you're taking care of yourself in a way that honors your health and wellness and your life, because we have our lives, and that is a gift, because many of us did not make it. Many of our loved ones did not make it, mine included, as you well know. And it's been a journey, and it's a new life now. And I'm just grateful that I get to experience that new life. And I think that, as we talk about the 4 tasks of mourning, I am certain that as we kind of chat about this today, that I am on that 4th task, that task of to find an enduring connection with the deceased in the midst of embarking on a new life. And that's the space I'm in. It's been a journey to get here. And I'm fully grateful for all of the people who have walked alongside me and have helped me to get here. Gwendolyn Goodman, Chantel Denise and family, Miss Goodman and her family, Brother Allen, Mr. Seals, Sorors, gosh, so many, too many to name. Marquita Lynn, my cousin. So many people have come alongside me and ushered me into the space where I am right now. And I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful. So I hope that as you go through the grieving process, and it is a process, y'all, that you will take a moment and acknowledge and shout out in your heart, whether out loud or in your heart, those who have walked with you on the journey. Because none of it we can do alone. Even in those times when it's not the loss of a loved one, who's holding you down when your job decides you are no longer necessary? And I've had that multiple times. Who's holding you down when the relationship fails? Yeah. So just keep in mind that you're not alone. And so today, before you rest, give a shout out to those who helped you walk the journey. So as we sign off tonight, I just want to once again acknowledge National Grief Awareness Night. I want to thank y'all for coming and hanging out with me tonight as we did a different kind of boss talk. And I just really appreciate y'all rolling with a sister tonight. So you can connect with me at livinglovedhealing.org for therapy, livinglovedcoaching.com for coaching. And I am back on Instagram at Living Loved Healing on Instagram and Facebook. And my nonprofit, the William Joseph Brinkley Center for Cultural Affirmation. And you can find that at www.wjbcenter.com. And that, by the way, is my way of finding an enduring connection to my loved one, William Joseph Brinkley. And I'm so honored to be able to honor him in that way as I move through my life. And I'll show you once again my TEDx talk. I'm going to put that link back up for you all, since it is about the grieving journey when the fairy tale fades. So you can find that right there. And once again, y'all, this has been Boss Talk, and that's bold, one of a kind, sensational superstars. And that's each and every one of you on here tonight. Linda, Kay, Gwen, Terry, William, Chantel, let's see who else was on here tonight. Connie. I appreciate y'all. I love y'all. Mr. Seals. And I will see y'all again in 2 weeks, because remember, I will be in Gay Paris. So, je t'aime and shalom, y'all. It's your girl, Shonda Ray. Peace. Listen to my tune as we go out. Thank you once again for tuning in to Boss Talk. That's always one of a kind, sensational superstars, and that's you. And we'll be back on September 13th live. Tune in on September 6th for an encore show. So do love y'all, shalom y'all, and y'all with love. Mwah. Hey, Bobby D, love you, bud. Talk to you soon.